Hi, friends. Wonderful to be with you today. I hope you're doing well. Always wonderful to be with this daily sit community. So many familiar, beloved names and faces, and new people as well. Wonderful to be with you all. So, broadly speaking, there are two kinds of spiritual practice that kind of seen from a particular angle. When one looks at the narrative in the Torah, we can kind of pull from it these two approaches. And one is the approach of Shabbat, and the second is not the approach of the weekdays, but it's really the approach of building the Mishkan, the tabernacle. So, and there's more to say about this, and as is, I think, probably always true, things are more complex than simple rubrics, but I find that kind of simplicity helpful. And so I often think about this, that in my mindfulness practice, in my Jewish mindfulness practice, there's an approach that's really cultivating a Shabbat-like orientation towards my experience. And there's a different kind of approach that is really about building a mishkan, a tabernacle. And our tradition sees these practices as being complementary, and we learn a lot about Shabbat and Mishkan building by the way in which twice these are, both of these practices are really held together in the Torah narrative. A couple of parshiot ago in Parsha Truma, we had instructions for building the Mishkan, and then it culminated with Shabbat. And then in this week's double portion, it's sort of the flip of that. We begin by an instruction to keep Shabbat, followed by instructions for building the Mishkan in this week's parsha. Again, double portion, Vayakhel Pekudei. So much has been written about this, and it's a really central dynamic in Jewish spiritual life, understanding the differences between these two different orientations. And much of what the way we practice Shabbat today comes from our sages understanding it as being not the work of building the Mishkan, the tabernacle. It's a different kind of orientation. And so I actually today want to focus in our practice on the side of Mishkan building, of tabernacle building. And there's much that we could say about that. And the Mishkan, I just want to kind of make it as simple as possible. And Anmol, when you're ready, if you could please share the screen. There's a brief source sheet I want to share. Thank you. Great. And again, there's much that we can learn about spiritual practice, mindfulness practice, from how we talk about the Mishkan. But I really want to highlight two qualities that are mentioned in the beginning of this week's Parsha that I really want to just bring into our practice with us today. So first is this quality, you could see it in the bold, Kechu me'itchem truma lashem kol nediv libo yivyeha et trumat Hashem zahav vechesef unechoshet. Take from among you gifts to the divine. Everyone whose heart is so moved shall bring them gifts for God, gold, silver, and copper. So again, in the bold there, this phrase, nediv libo, or as also can be understood as nidivut lev, is how that quality is often described. Generosity of heart. Anybody whose heart is so moved will bring these gifts. So there's a generosity of spirit and a generosity of heart. that is essential in building the Mishkan. So we're going to bring that into our practice. I'll come back to that a little bit more in just a moment. But just hold on to that uh, fundamentally, we are orienting ourselves with a generosity of spirit towards our lives and towards what we are experiencing in this moment. So that is the first quality. And the second quality, also literally a heart quality, using that language of lev, of heart, as a part of the name of this quality, v'chol chacham lev bachem yavo ve'yasu et kol asher tziva Hashem. And let all among you who are heart wise, is how I translated this. JPS translates it as skilled, but it's heart wisdom. Everybody with heart wisdom, come and help construct this Mishkan, is essentially what this verse is saying. So this heart wisdom is needed to help us build the Mishkan. So how do we access heart wisdom? To a great extent, I really see that as the work that we're doing in our practice. As we sit and bring kind and honest attention to our moment-to-moment experience, as we do in our meditation, and we notice what is arising, and we notice ourselves getting distracted, and then we do teshuvah, we return our attention back. That is really strengthening this heart wisdom muscle. I love the line from Pirkei Avot, the final verse on the sheet here, Marbe Yeshiva, Marbe Chochma, a piece of wisdom from one of our sages, Hillel, who says, the more sitting, the more wisdom. And I really think about it in the context of this sitting in meditation practice. The more we can really be in our experience and train in being with our experience moment to moment, with chesed, with kindness, and with emet, with honesty, with clear seeing and presence, that is really going to build our wisdom muscle. We can't make it happen, but that's how we cultivate wisdom over time, by attending to our experience as we're training in our meditation. So again, I want to offer that we bring these two qualities into our practice as we'll just sit now in just a moment. That first, we're just really generous with ourselves. It is not easy being a human being. Even under the best of circumstances, having a human body, being in relationships, being part of communities and nations in the world, is not easy. And so it's essential that we bring this nidivut lev, this generosity of heart, into our experience. That's a significant flavor of how we are receiving this moment, and then this moment, and then we get distracted and we get annoyed, and we hold that as well with this nidivut lev, this generosity. And we know that by doing that over and over again, moment after moment, we are cultivating this chokhmat lev, a wise heart. So this is the practice, at least one expression of it, of what it means to build a mishkan. So let's sit now, and maybe I'll just give you, as we go into silence, a little bit of a nigun, and close with another little bit of a nigun a few minutes before the hour. Thanks, everybody. Nidivut lev and chokhmat lev, generosity of heart and heart wisdom. Yai, yai, yai. Yai, 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 yai. Yai, 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 yai. Yai, 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 yai. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Beautiful practice this week leading into this double parsha, Lagak Helpiku Day, and seeing our practice as an expression both of Shabbat and as creating this Mishkan together. And let's seal that beautiful practice as we do each day. Those of you who are in mourning, observing a yard site, are invited to recite the mourner's Kaddish, as well as anybody for whom it's the custom to join in the Kaddish. Put the name or names of anybody you're honoring today in the chat now or after we recite Kaddish. Thanks to Rachel for sharing the words on the screen. If you're not reciting Kaddish, we ask you please stay present for a minute to support those who are, and invite you to rise in body or in spirit if you're reciting Kaddish, and you can unmute at this time. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Yamad, Yimach, Yirteh, Yirich Malchuteh, Hayakol, Yed, Omer, Agalat, Bizman, Karib, Baruch, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevarach, Le'olam V'Amen Hamayah. Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitpa'ar, V'Yitzman, V'Yitnaseh, Yitpa'ar, V'Yitpaleh, V'Yitpalal, Shemei Kedusha, V'Kudusha. Ha'elam Kol Birchata V'Shirata, Shvachata V'Nechemata, Amiran V'Alma V'Amru, Amen. Shlama Rabba Mi Shemaya V'Chaim, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael,
Amen.
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 Shalom Yamama,
Shalom.
Shalom,
Shalom.
Aleinu,
Shalom.
Israel, Kol Yoshua.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. If you're leaving us now, I hope you'll join us tomorrow. I'm putting in the chat lineup of our teachers for the rest of the week. We have a real all-star lineup this week, beginning today. Batting leadoff, Rabbi Jordan Bendat-Appell set the table beautifully for a week of practice. Our colleague, Rabbi Sam Feinsmith, will lead us tomorrow. Rabbi Mira Neshama Nicolescu on Wednesday. Maria Posta Duenas on the Daily Sit birthday, March 12th. No presents, please. And on Friday, we'll sit into Shabbat with Rabbi Dorothy Richmond. So hope you'll join us. Again, for those of you who joined us late, just letting you know that we will be on a short week-long hiatus the following week and then back the week after that. So just to remind you of that. Jordan, thank you so much. And also, of course, as always, you're welcome to join us in the chat with reflections on your experience with today's practice. Or if you have a question you'd like to ask Jordan, please put it in there. Just preface it by writing question. As Rabbi Francine Roston is modeling beautifully for us. I'll tee that up beautifully. Thank you. All right, Jordan, let's start with this. Rabbi Francine Roston is asking, can you say more about the spiritual practice of Shabbat at any time? One of my favorite questions. Let's start there, okay? Because you said, I mean, just the nutshell summary, I think, of the teaching was that these Torah portions about building of the Mishkan are also include the injunction about Shabbat, right? And they offer two, I don't forget what the word you used, but two approaches maybe.
Yeah.
Or how do we could understand what we call as this practice, right? One is Shabbat, and the other is to think of it as actually we are contributing, we're in some sense, as we're sitting here, we are cultivating qualities that lead towards the construction of the Mishkan, right? So let's start with Shabbat, okay? So how do you practice Shabbat at 12 o'clock East, 12:30 Eastern, while you're which not on Shabbat? How do you
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah. I also I love that question, and it's an important practice for me. I'm really inspired by a practice of the Sheish Zechirot, the six remembrances, which is
Mm-hmm.
a Hasidic practice. Interesting origins, a little unclear, but the idea that every day, including Monday, we
Mm-hmm.
remind ourselves of a certain list of things, and one of those is Shabbat. And there are different ways in which Jewish tradition understands the idea of remembering Shabbat on a Monday. From the perspective of this practice, to me, it feels pretty clear in my own experience that it is really helpful for me to touch a Shabbat-like experience uh, every day. And it's a taste of it. It's not a full immersion as I try to do
Mm-hmm.
imperfectly on Shabbat day itself, but any day of the week we can really remember, which in Jewish spiritual practice is it's an active practice of weaving into our consciousness actively with intention a certain idea, a certain feeling. And so I bring that into my life and practice. I try to every day for little glimpses, little tastes. I very much think of it as like going into an arc for a period of 15-minute meditation. And if I had to, there's again a lot to say about what makes it a Shabbat practice, but
Mm-hmm.
at its heart, for me, it's
Mm-hmm.
really about menucha, which is about really actively letting go, and not trying to control or make or fix or even cultivate, but really to try to just open to an experience of life as it is. So, and with a kind of a sweetness, that's also a part of a Shabbat consciousness. So
Mm-hmm.
I try to touch that every day, even
Mm-hmm.
little tastes of it. Uh,
Great. That's a great, I think that's a great answer. And like sometimes I will use the phrase microdose Shabbat, right?
yeah,
And just like as you're saying, like touching into that kind of release. When you're saying also, we used to talk when you were talking about control, called to mind for me the Serenity Prayer, and the first line of the Serenity Prayer being the serenity to accept that things cannot control. So there is that sort of sense of letting go of control or releasing the illusion of having control, which leads to Shireen's question in the chat. I hope you're saying her name correctly, Shireen. Um, just brought up to me question about time. Is all life on divine time, or do we have some control over time? So that's a great question, I think, because of course, in his, probably the best book we have, contemporary book for sure on Shabbat, um, Abraham Joshua Heschel's book on Shabbat, really describes Shabbat as having the experience of being in God's time, in an eternity, and then we enter the world of linear time with clocks that we set back and forth, and we 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 create this illusion of, oh, we've changed the time, right? No, the clock is different now, and that's we create that sense of linear time that is represented as well by the Mishkan. So I want to use that for to switch into what you're saying about the Mishkan, which for me is a little bit the juxtaposition of non-work, non-productivity, non-creativity, Shabbat, and then Mishkan represents the work of engaging in the world, but as a sacred practice, right?
yeah,
That's what makes it the Mishkan work that makes the divine manifest or makes us aware of the divine presence in an ongoing way. So what do you think about Shireen's question? But this brought up to me about, is all life on divine time, or do we have some control over time?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think both. Um, Within the, I like also I Harris's reflection on that.
Mhm.
My own sense is that we have control over what we do with the time we are
Mhm.
allotted. Yeah, um, um, uh, to a significant degree for me, my meditation practice is about training in how I am present in time.
Mhm.
When I'm meditating, I don't imagine that the goal is to make time stop.
Mhm.
It doesn't work, but rather it's cultivating an orientation of how I'm present with time, how I'm orienting myself towards time. The beautiful way in which Heschel talks about Shabbat as a palace in time, a cathedral in time, he uses different words. Um, it, to me, is so powerful because it's like Heschel saying when you're in this, when you're within this palace, uh, everything that you're experiencing is experienced in that palace. It has and so in our practice, to me, it's very important to set a timer when I'm practicing on my own because that it seems really mundane, but to me, it kind of creates a structure that can hold time. And so I can enter into that palace more fully. So there's a way in which my practice at any day of the week has elements of that Shabbat-like experience of really trying to be with time with a Shabbat kind of heart.
Right.
And that's different in important ways from this Mishkan orientation. I think it's important that we distinguish between them, and they're related, of course, just like they're neighbors in the Torah, the Shabbat and the Mishkan. They're really held together. But a Mishkan orientation, I really love how you said it. It's like, how can I be in the world? How am I orienting myself towards the work
Mhm.
of building a life, building a heart, building a way of being in the world? That is like it's cultivation, and
Right.
it's built, it's constructive, and but it's saying it's not just any work that we do in this world 6 days a week, but we're really trying to build a sacred world, a world
Mhm.
that is reminds us of the most important things.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I can say more about this stuff, but
Well, we'll segue a little bit
yeah,
because I want to talk about what you brought in with the heart. I do want to address Raheli was saying, what if you can't, like, in terms of observing Shabbat, just to get to the practical aspect of it, what if, circumstances are such that one can't observe Shabbat? And I think part of what, hopefully is from this conversation is that, I mean, one can observe Shabbat in a very traditional way, right? And not have the experience, by the way, that you're describing, right? One could observe Shabbat by the letter and not have any of that awareness, right?
yeah,
And one could have a moment of true and deep Shabbat awareness in the midst of the week, right? So that's which is always available. So I want to put that out. But Jordan, when you're talking about like the kind of work that is transforms work, and we're using work very broadly, they're not, career work, but just engagement in the world. You brought two snippets of text from the Torah portion, both of which had to do with the heart, the div lev, a willing heart, and chachmat lev, wisdom of the heart. And we use the word heart quite a bit at IJS, right? We sometimes, for shorthand, people will say, "Oh, what we offer is a heart-centered approach to Judaism, as opposed to a heady or intellectual approach to Judaism, right? Um, and we don't mean literally the heart, although we do bring attention to this part of our body and
Hmm.
what's inside. So my question for you is, and which is not an easy question, is when we use the word heart, what are we really talking about in terms of practice? Um, sometimes we'll use that phrase incline the heart because you just used the word cultivation, right? So there's the Shabbat practice of release and surrender, and then there's the cultivation practice. While we're sitting, something's actually happening. We're inclining the heart, or we're trying to access wisdom of the heart. What do we mean by heart when we say that? I don't know. What do you mean by heart when you say that? If that's fair to ask you,
Yeah.
it's a big one.
Yeah, it's such a
And
big one. It's
you have
so
three minutes.
okay. Perfect.
Go.
I don't even think I need that long because
Okay.
to me it's really about the inner experience
Hmm.
with an and I really want to underline the embodied way in which one has that inner experience. So inner could also be, very like cognitive. Um, what the way I relate to Lev in the way that we're using it here is
Hmm.
that it's pointing towards an inner experience that's really felt.
Hmm.
So, you know, Nadiv Lev, generosity of heart, it seems like that's really talking about like you're feeling it.
Hmm.
Um, it's not just an abstract idea, but you feel it in your tissues, and that is connected to an emotional reality and a intellectual reality. And
Hmm.
also, and then with this heart wisdom, I think again, it's intended to be not just an intellectual wisdom, but something that is, again, it's felt, and it comes kind of from the kishkas, as we'd say, from the innards. Uh,
That
yeah.
is a great answer. And that was 2 minutes, Jordan. That was great. I think that's a fantastic answer. I did a quick look at the root for Nadav, Nun Dalet Vet, which is what's used in association. And, the biblical root seems to have this connotation of incitement, which is interesting, like a
Hmm.
kind of energizing of the heart, which goes to what you're talking about, like tapping into and maybe cultivating, amplifying, fostering, nurturing some instinct or inclinations that are lodged within us, right?
Yeah.
That you just described really, I think, very beautifully and succinctly, whether it's in our body, our, we use the kishkas as kind of a synonym for our intuitive knowing, right?
Yeah.
Uh, that we can also look to, we don't just rely on what's up here, right?
Yeah.
Although we don't deny that either. That's part of it,
Right.
right? The intellectual, that is also part of it. So we pay attention to the body, we pay attention to emotions, we pay attention to the thoughts, and we pay attention to what lies beyond that, right? To the
Yeah.
intangible, ineffable, indescribable aspects of ourself that are also true, even if you can't feel them, touch them, and sometimes even describe them.
Hmm.
So thank you for that. Thanks for lifting that up and reminding us that each day when we're sitting, we're really releasing control. We're able to see more clearly by being able to like stop that struggle and tap into wisdom and willingness that is there, that's innate, that we would not otherwise notice or be able to call upon. We sure need it these days.
Yeah.
That's for
Amen.
darn sure. Um, all right, my friend. Thank you. As
Thank
always,
you.
so grateful, for you, first of all, laying the groundwork for being here, and second of all, teaching us so beautifully today and each time you're with us. And as I said, setting the table for this week of practice. Great lead off single by Jordan Bendat-Appell. We have a runner on base, and Sam Finesmith is coming up tomorrow.
Oof.
So I'm very excited. Hopefully he will bring you home, Jordan.
I'm in.
As you can tell, it's baseball. It's baseball season.
Yeah, I'm feeling it.
Yeah. Thanks to Rachel, and thanks to Anmol for holding our tech space jointly today so securely, faithfully, beautifully as always. And we hope to see you all tomorrow to practice with Rabbi Sam Finesmith, everyone. Many blessings. Stay safe. Stay well.
Be well. Thank you.